When we think of habits, we often think of impressive habits. Going to the gym, dieting, meditating, or reading for long periods of time. But some of my favorite habits aren't all that impressive. So here are 5 of my favorite low energy habits. If you peered into my windows around 10 p.m., which would be super weird, please don't do that, you might be confused by a few things. It might almost look like I'm starting my morning in the evening. Okay, well, you wouldn't actually be that far off, because the first habit I've developed is what I call tomorrow prep. Every evening while I have a few brain cells still knocking around, I take about 3 minutes and prep for my habits in the morning. For example, I drink a fiber supplement every morning, so the night before I fill a glass with water and put it in the fridge. I also drink tea in the morning, so I usually will fill the pitcher, get my mug out, add sugar and the tea bag, and then just leave it on the counter. I also get dressed in the morning, we hope. So I usually put my clothes out the night before of what I'm going to wear. This may sound trivial, right? But it works wonders. And despite what you may think, it's not actually about efficiency. The main area this targets is friction. After all, we aren't usually banging on all cylinders when we wake up, at least I'm not. So when I stumble into the kitchen, the less I have to think about and the less willpower I need to use, the better. This way, all the prep has already been done. I just wake up and go through the motions. And best of all, it helps me get out of bed on time because there's almost no friction to starting my day. One of the coolest habits I've built, in my opinion, is the flashcard journaling system. Journaling has always been a bit hard for me. I struggle to do things that don't have a clear purpose or structure. So I developed an alternative that I'm really excited about. Each night, I take one of these and I create a memory flashcard. On one side, I describe a moment from my day that I want to remember. Some include a meaningful interaction, others may simply just be a really interesting fact that I learned and I don't want to forget. After I've written down the memory, I flip the card over and right up here on the top, I write the date, and then in the middle of the card, I write down a few words or sentence to jog my memory about what I wrote. Essentially, I've just created a flashcard. On this side, I see the date and a little description, and with that, I try to recall what the memory was that I recorded and wrote in detail on the other side. If I can't remember it, then I just flip it over and review. After I write it down, I add it to the stack of other flashcards that I have, and I usually review about 5 of the other ones as well. Doing 5 a day, I figure will allow me to cover each memory multiple times per month, which is easily enough to remember it without the card. Now I can separate them out by month, and I have a snapshot of each of the best moments from my day. I even take this one step farther. Each month I review the month's flashcards and I select the top 3 that are the most important, the ones that I really want to remember. I copy them and then I pin them on my bulletin board right back there. I have tried some pretty elaborate morning routines with some varying levels of success, but the one that I have selected might not be what you'd expect. I call this my incredibly therapeutic morning routine, and it goes as follows. After waking, I make a cup of tea, read, and watch the sunrise. That's it. Now, that might surprise you since I'm someone who deeply values productivity. Building the habit of a slow morning has helped me in numerous ways, but the main way is it stabilizes me for the rest of the day. Life already feels enough like a rat race to me, so allowing myself to just wake up in a non-stimulating manner really helps. For me, it feels like I'm less reactive the rest of the day. Just as it's important to start slowly in my morning, it's also important to do this, to slow down and unwind in the evening. I call this my ambient evening habit. I've built the habit of turning off all my lights except for lamps around 7 to 8 p.m. And when I do that, I also cut way back on what I allow into my attentional space, usually only simple things, and I usually just do one thing at a time. So during this time, I'll do tomorrow's prep, I'll talk with friends, I'll read, or I'll fill out one of the memory flashcards. But overall, I just take it a lot slower. And there's a couple reasons for this. One would be my quality of work, it just isn't that great at 8 p.m. anyway, so I'm much more liable to make mistakes or get distracted and waste time on something. Not to mention, I have a harder time sleeping, which affects my productivity the next day. But there's definitely another side to it as well, and that is that productivity and efficiency is good and all, but I'm not really interested in running myself ragged. I'd rather be strategic with my time so that I can enjoy my work time as well as my rest time. This last one might be the weirdest sounding to you, and it's a bit overarching. It's not just one specific habit. I've developed the habit of something I call slow productivity. Slow productivity is intentionally adding behaviors that you can't rush, at least not very easily. Now, I'm not sure what your personality is when it comes to things like this, but for me, I tend to make everything a competition with myself, where I'm trying to make it as productive and as efficient as possible. And there's a place for that, but when every task falls into that category, it just gets exhausting. That's why I had to start implementing behaviors that I just couldn't really do that with. It forces me to slow down, which helps me accumulate more energy for heavier tasks that I need to perform. For me, it's kind of like I'm creating these little pockets of time throughout my day where I'm not trying to accomplish something. I do something just because I enjoy doing it. These behaviors are things like the process of making tea or making coffee. Try as hard as you want, you can't really rush that. So you might as well slow down and enjoy the process. Even something like I have plants in my house that need to be watered. Sure, I could rush through that process every single time and maybe save myself 2 whole minutes, or I could just chill. I mean, how crazy would that be? The key with all of this is balance. And as someone who pushes himself and is very competitive, these are really important habits for me. Without these, I will slowly deplete my energy until I crash. And then I wonder why I can't get anything done. In the long run, these save me a lot more than time. It's really challenging to crack the code of building habits. But I made a video that does that. It took me a long time to figure it out, but I condensed it down into a single video that you can watch here in the center of the screen. And if that's not enough information for you, check out this newsletter up here, because I go through the whole process, start to finish, in that entire newsletter. It's long and very detailed.